Welcome to Mental Performance Unleashed with Emily Heird.
Welcome back to Mental Performance Unleashed. I'm Emily Heird, licensed psychotherapist and mental performance mastery coach, and I help high-performing attorneys and legal leaders build the mental skills required for sustainable elite performance. Today's episode is a little different. I'm joined by Dennis D.M. Metter, founder and CEO of the Legal Podcast Network. Dennis works with thousands of attorneys across the country and understands firsthand the pressure high performers operate under. In this episode, we're stepping into a live mental performance conversation, looking at what sustained leadership pressure does to cognitive clarity, decision-making, and recovery, and how high-performing founders can train their minds the way elite athletes train their bodies. Dennis, welcome.
I'm very excited to be on the show, Emily. Ever since we first met months back and I found out what you do and your approach to it, I was super excited to have you on the network. And now we get to spend some time together, get to know each other a little bit. So I'm ready for you to pick my brain, bear all before the world. Let's dig in and see if we can't be a help to each other and, more importantly, to those who are watching and listening.
Sounds great. So, DM, as you think about leading and scaling your company right now, where do you experience the most sustained cognitive strain? Would you say it's decision volume, responsibility, speed, unpredictability, or something else?
I would say it's unaligned responsibility. That has really been my drag lately. I just had a leadership meeting yesterday and I said, listen, guys, I love all of you, but when I'm sitting in this meeting and we're talking about onboarding processes and we're talking about calendar issues and fixes and things, I was like, this is work to me. Now, when I'm in my strong suit, when I'm in my place, like where I am right now on camera, when I am working with my sales team, my setting team, when I'm working with marketing and initiatives and things like that, that's not work to me. That's just me thinking out loud. But when I get into these areas of my company where it's not really my area of expertise, it's not an area where I feel strong, sure, I can use common sense and I can use my own user experience to apply it. But ultimately, that is where I get dragged down, is when it's misaligned with the actual things that I'm involved in.
That makes sense. Yeah. So when that demand increases for you, when that friction shows up, what patterns show up for you first? Would you say it is like increasing the speed at which you work, taking on more yourself, kind of that extra responsibility piece? Do you tend to tighten standards? Do you expand your availability for your staff, or does something else show up?
Well, I think that it's a couple different things, and it depends on the situation. Like in this area in particular, I tend to shrink a little bit. I tend to just like try to back away from things and like shrink up and be like, oh, I'll decide that tomorrow. I'll handle that next week. And I tend to put things off because I don't feel confident in, like I do in other areas, where I can be like, nope, do this, nope, do that. So I would say that that's probably the biggest negative thing that I find myself doing, is I tend to withdraw. And when that happens, I tend to not have that filter of pleasantness that I try to have with my team. And I feel it. Like I feel myself constantly saying, I'm not mad at you. I'm just frustrated at the situation that we're in. I'm not mad at you. I'm just trying to get to this decision. So that's really been the thing that, when I get into that situation, what I tend to do. And that's why I want to get out of the place.
So I'm hearing there's some, like you said, withdrawing. You want to hide some procrastination when you feel like this isn't your zone of genius or your zone of competence. And then that irritability, that internal tension comes up for you.
Absolutely.
So how does that pattern affect your ability to operate strategically versus staying in execution mode? You mentioned a little bit about, procrastinating and that bringing out that part of you. Is there any other way that affects your ability to operate or execute?
Well, what I try to do is when I find myself in those places, when I find myself getting irritated, I know something's not right. So I try to get to the root source. So, like, for example, with this situation, yes, I've like kind of dove in on a few things, but then it's like a redelegation of
Mhm.
things where I'm like, okay, I'm handling these things, but do I need to be handling these things? Or do I have a person that's supposed to take ownership? And I'm a little frustrated that they haven't executed my vision 100% the way that I want it. So I've kind of inserted myself into a place. So I try to figure out where have I inserted myself versus where am I needed. And then once I decide, okay, I've inserted myself, let me back off and trust them. Then I start tackling the things where I'm needed. And what I try to then do is set up systems around where I'm needed. For example, we are interviewing a fractional director of operations to kind of come in and handle all this stuff that I've been handling the last few months. So,
Mhm.
it's one of two things. It's either just delegate off, or, pull myself out of things and trust the people who've been delegated, which
Mhm.
is hard sometimes. And then
Mhm.
the other one that I tend to do is let's fix, because if you have a problem that keeps cropping up over and over, it's not a problem, it's a process issue. And so I'm trying to fix the issue of the process that then allows me to then step away from that and stay in my zone of genius.
Mhm. Yeah, so I'm hearing a strong mental skill of awareness. So you have awareness on your part of, what is the root of this? Is it issue A or issue B? And you have a system to solve for either one of those issues. Awareness is a very strong, it's very important mental skill, and I love that you reflect on what exactly is going on before you take action there. So, when I look at cognitive strain in high performing leaders, I tend to see it show up in a few areas. One is around decision density. There are so many decisions that have to be made every single day. Constant context switching, which is very important, expensive energy wise. The emotional weight of the responsibility, and then role diffusion. Does one of those feel most dominant for you right now with where your company is?
Yeah, I feel like that's something that I feel a lot of strain with, a lot of
Mm,
stress with. This is just like, because I'm just like, I'm so focused on, okay, oh, we got this in marketing. Oh, we're going to carry this cadence and we're going to do this and let's write this. And, I just, again, I feel like I'm in this place. And then all of a sudden it's like, I have to hit the brakes,
yep.
stop, and not just stop and pivot real quickly. Cause like I can pivot from marketing to sales real quickly. But when I have to pivot from marketing all the way over to CS and onboarding processes and things like that, it almost feels like I have to like I've never done this, but I think we've all thought like, what if I was going down the road at like 90 miles an hour and then I just threw it into park?
Hmm.
That's what I feel like. I feel like I'm like throwing it into park or reverse and going like, and then stopping and
Hmm.
then being able to do it. So that's definitely the biggest drag, is switching from one to the other. I don't really have like, I think one of them was not the word imposter syndrome, but just basically like feeling like you shouldn't be doing that, like that drag down from that.
Hmm.
That's never really something I struggle with. And I don't think most high performers, I mean, we hear about imposter syndrome, but to me, I'm like, if I hear somebody talking about imposter syndrome, that's probably because they aren't that person that is that high performer, that high mental acuity. It's very rare for me and people that I know that I talk to in my sort of position for us to
Hmm.
sit around and go, well, I really shouldn't be here. Like, we all feel like we should be here. We just want to be
Hmm.
better at being here.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, so that extreme switch from marketing to CS is using completely different parts of your brain. Whereas if you're going from marketing to sales, that's going to be somewhat similar areas of the brain. So that might be why you feel the need to pull the emergency brake there. So do you use any sort of strategies, knowing that is a real drain on your energy and your performance and the demand? Do you use any strategies to minimize and conserve cognitive energy when you have all these various hats that you're wearing as the CEO?
I try to do what I call stacking. So, like Mondays are meetings and trainings and things like that, where it's very much in my team, stats, data, fixing problems. I know that's what it is. My mind's ready for it. So, Monday, I do that. Now, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, I try to be in front of the camera. I try to be, meeting with potential clients, referral partners, whatever it is. I tend to be what I call, customer facing, whether it's on scale, like in a podcast, or whether it's on, whatever. And then Friday, I try to make it my wrap up, so I know it's a little hodgepodge of everything. So I
Hmm.
found that by segmenting and stacking, like, if I could do 3, 4 podcasts in a row, those 3, 4 podcasts are going to be a lot better than if in the middle of a day I do a podcast here and then I switch gears and I do a podcast on Thursday. So by stacking my tasks
Hmm.
according to what types of tasks they are, it tends to allow me to not get as frustrated in different types of tasks by simply just structuring my days that way.
Hmm. Yes, that is very smart. Smart move to do task batching, and even sounds like you have somewhat like theme days. So your entire days are dedicated to a certain area of your business, which definitely is strategic. And when making important decisions, when do you notice your judgment is strongest, and when does it begin to feel more reactive or fatigued?
So I've had to teach myself with decisions with my background and, really coming from an authoritarian type of situation growing up. I grew up in like very right wing type churches where the pastor says it. And then I was the pastor for 20 years. I was a business owner. So I kind of was used to that authoritarian, like sort of top down, what I say goes, to the point where they weren't even really asking others. And what I've been able to do here, and I set out to do this from the beginning, is to surround myself with people who I move into like a director type of position. And then I empower them and enable them for their areas. But then once a week, we come together and I come in and I'll be like, hey guys, I've got this idea. And sometimes they're like, this is great. And, sometimes they're like, what were you thinking? And,
Mhm.
I have to, because there's a part of me that's like, I don't have to listen to what they say. My name's on the certificate. I'm the guy, you know what I mean? But then it's like,
Mhm.
wait a minute, like I need to value the life experience, the perspective, the intelligence, and the opinion of those people that I have specifically placed around me, that I've told them over and over, I don't want a sycophant. I don't want yes men. I want people who will say, are you sure that's right? Are you sure you're doing the right thing? So that when that time comes, I can't get frustrated that they're doing the exact thing that I have strongly encouraged them to do, which is when I come in with an idea that maybe sounds great to me, not such a great idea across the board. And one I think of real quick is I talked to some folks that had to do with TEDx, and they were like, listen, we can have you going out, but we want you to talk about this specific subject, had nothing to do with our company.
Mm.
And so I would have been running around for a few months at a time, going to all these TEDx, talking about some personal things in my life, blah, blah, blah. And I was all excited about it. And I went to my team and they were like, you know, we're glad for that, but I mean, shouldn't we be focused on what we're doing here? And like, if it's not going to move the company forward, should you really be looking at it? And I was just like, I knew they were going to say that, but so
Mhm.
you have to be willing to hold yourself accountable to the very things that you set up,
Mhm.
or you're going to put yourself in a position where you're just like, what I say is, don't create your own echo chamber of awesome where
Mhm.
everyone just goes, wow, that's a great idea. You're right. We should all work with no hands. That's brilliant, boss. We should just type with our noses. That's all we need to do from now on. Right. So
Mhm.
by putting those people around you who aren't afraid to say, we probably should use hands when we work, instead of go, you're right, boss. I think that's been integral to a lot of helping me stay on the path.
Mhm. Mhm. So you've built this high performing team of experts that you trust their opinions, you trust their judgments, and then you've also built a culture where not only is it okay to push back against you, but you invite that and you want that as you are building your company.
I know that it's not an easy thing because I'm a pretty strong personality. And I'm like one of those people, I'm like, hey, you can come to me and say you don't agree, but you better be ready to argue on why you don't agree. I never have from anybody taken just a yes, no. If you've got a no, give me a no, make it make sense, make it logical. But if I understand and I agree, I'll go, you're right. I'm going to follow you. So being willing to just kind of buy into that,
Hmm.
but also have space to challenge and be yourself. And that's why it takes a special kind of strength of a person to work with me.
What performance standard do you think that you hold yourself to that may actually be increasing the mental demand of your role? Kind of something that is brought on by the way that you operate.
Well, I grew up learning a philosophy that says everything rises and falls on leadership.
Mm.
And that is not completely scalable as you grow a business. And so I try to, it's kind of like expansion, contraction. I kind of get in, look around, see if I see anything. If I don't see anything, I'm like, all right, good job, guys, and then back off. But what ends up happening is like I'll expand into something. I'll see something that isn't quite the way that I thought it should be, or like I pay attention to all of our content from our clients and look at it and does it look good? Am I happy the way it looks in the feed? Blah 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 blah. Like that's not completely scalable. And so
Mm.
that's a lesson that I've had to learn as a leader is yes, everything rises and falls on your leadership, but at the end of the day, there has to be some areas where you can step away and 100% not worry about it. And I have a few departments like that. This division right here that works with you and the other ones who shoot shows with us, Carrie runs it and all of her team. And I literally worry this much about it every week. And it's wonderful. I have another division, Saad, same thing. He runs all of our fulfillment. I worry this much about it. But I still got 6 other divisions that I'm just like, so I can't wait to get to that point where I am able to step away mentally and emotionally and know that it's 100% taken care of.
Mhm.
That, I've got checks and balances in place. I've got my vision in place. I've got the procedures in place, and it's going to keep moving the way that it's supposed to.
Awesome. Yeah, the importance of trusting your team. So, last question for today. A lot of the majority of the clients that I work with really struggle with the idea of integrating recovery into work as a strategy for sustainable elite performance. I'm curious, is recovery an area where you see it as a strength of yours or an area of improvement?
So this is a work in progress of about 12 years because, first started in business in my early teens, serious in my early 20s. I've been a hard charger. I had 1 or 2 businesses, pastored a church full time, had 3 children, kind of like, I believed for decades every moment must be monetized.
Mm.
Then at 36 years old, fell on my back for a year and a half, thought I had MS. Turned out I just had a nervous breakdown. I could work about 10 hours a week. And because of my skill set, I was able to still provide what I needed to provide for my family. But the last 12 years of learning, like, okay, you don't have to work 20 hours a day. You don't have to work 6, 7 days a week. You don't have to do all of these things and be successful. You can pace yourself. And that's why I talk a lot about pacing and life flow. So,
Mhm.
for example, I live on an island in Belize. So, not every day, but 3, 4, 5 days a week, I walk about 20 feet that way and I look at one of the most beautiful sunsets that you can see anywhere, definitely that I've seen in my life. I can walk about 100 yards that way and be right on the beach, enjoying the Caribbean Sea and boats and docks and all of that. I take my dog for a walk, evenings, weekends. Like I turn my phone off a lot of times on the evenings and especially on the weekends, completely turn it off
Mhm.
because I know if I'm going to check my LinkedIn. How am I moving on LinkedIn? How's this going? Look, Carrie asked me a question, the thing I need to answer it. I know it's Sunday at 2 o'clock. Like, so I've had to teach myself, and I think put a lot of boundaries around myself that it's like sometimes I'm like, I am a grown man. Why do I have to turn my cell phone off not to be on it? But
Mhm.
the truth is, I
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
So I really think like I'm doing a much better job at it. I have a wife who's cognizant of it. So even when we travel, we work a few days, but she makes sure I have time off. She makes sure that when we're spending time together, that I'm not just there, but I'm present.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm very fortunate in that, not just for myself, that determination, but I have people around me who have seen that importance of what happens when I just get wound up and keep going, and they notice the signs and they call me out on it. So, I've thought about whether it's a report, a book, a video series, but like the concept of it takes a village to raise an entrepreneur.
Mm-hmm.
Like, no accomplished long term. Now, I'm not talking about a 22-year-old short term that just grinds. I'm talking about a long term accomplished entrepreneur is ever there solely by themselves. They have support staff, they
Yep.
have people that, in their family, partner, whatever. There are several people around them that support them. I have a business coach, I have a therapist, I have a marriage therapist that we do preemptive marriage counseling. I have a business or I have a psychiatrist. I have, health people, like all these people, my wife who does this, like all of these people
Mm-hmm.
that are watching me, who I've said, listen, if I just go on my own in my natural state, I will wear myself to the bone. So watch out for these things. And if you see this, say this to me, and
Mm-hmm.
that's our magic word. It's like our safe word, but
Yeah.
for a different reason. So we have safe words that kind of just let me know, hey, I see you and you don't see what I'm seeing. So calm down a little bit. So that's been integral in burnout and all of that, is because not just the self-determination and the self-monitoring, but the people around me that love me and care about me enough to say, hey, you're not being yourself. You need to calm down a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I love that. Yeah. And experiencing burnout, the body just shutting down like that forces us to change. And it's one of those moments in life that, I've had one of those that just kind of completely turns the world around. And it's great that you have support and systems and barriers to prevent you from getting back there. And then not only that, but as the CEO of the company, your employees follow what you model. So if you are modeling disconnecting, being off your phone, it's okay to take, more than 10 minutes to respond to an email, that work-life balance, then they feel the permission to do that themselves, which builds
Oh,
an excellent
absolutely.
culture.
Absolutely. I'm so proud of the fact, like when I hop on the weekend onto our, like, it's not Slack, it's called Roam, and it's like Slack times 100. It's really awesome.
Mm-hmm.
But it's our inter-office, like sort of uh, virtual company way that we connect. And I get on there on like a Saturday and I'm like, nobody's on here. Or I get on there like a 7:30 at night, no one's on here. I get here on a Sunday, no one's on here. I'm proud of that. I don't look at it and go, why don't I have anybody in here getting some work done, caught up? Matter of
Mm-hmm.
fact, just Friday night, somebody at 7:30 was on there, and I was like, hey, it's 7:30. Why are you inside of Rome? And
Mm-hmm.
they just disconnect. They didn't even say anything. They just like got off and got disconnected. They're just like, oh,
Uh-huh.
he caught me. So that's definitely a part of our culture, because listen, I don't want to end up where I was, and I don't want anybody that works with me to end up in a place where they have some sort of like anxiety to the point where it causes panic attacks, nervous breakdowns, things like that. To me, work is what we do to pay for who we are.
Mm-hmm.
And, so many people define themselves by what they do for a living, whereas I'm just like, that should be the last part of your definition. I'm this, and this. And oh, by the way, I do this to fund that. That's my
Absolutely.
philosophy.
Yes, that identity piece is huge. Well, high performance is not about increasing effort indefinitely, as Dennis just was talking about. It's about building systems that protect clarity, decision quality, and long term sustainability. Elite athletes train deliberately, and leaders should too. If you want practical, science backed strategies to strengthen your mental fitness and operate more like an intellectual athlete, visit my website at vantageviewcoaching.com. Thanks for joining us on Mental Performance Unleashed. Be sure to like, subscribe, and leave a review, and I'll see you next time.
Thanks for watching. Be sure to hit that like and subscribe button and leave us a review in the comments.